There's an incredible opportunity to use power in business. The purpose of power in business is an incredible opportunity. Let me start with an example. In 1997, Steve Jobs returned to Apple. He was fired 12 years before, and he returned as CEO. But it was not an easy situation. The company was 90 days away from going bankrupt. Customers were fleeing, the morale in the company was extremely low, stock price was going down. Yet 90 days before it would go bankrupt. On the first day he walked into Apple, he made a choice. He said, I'm just coming in to save the company, or I want to create a truly amazing company. And he chose the second one. And he studied companies, he learned from companies like Walt Disney, that having a good purpose is something that really drives the business forward. Walt Disney we make people happy through great stories. So he went every week, it was extremely busy, carved out a couple of hours to figure out what is the purpose of Apple. And he landed with this notion of passionate people can change the world for the better. And that should be the driving force behind Apple. They launched a whole campaign about Think Different. That was a real changing campaign. The energy in the company changed. They looked with that lens to all the product offering and said, well, we don't need all these products, we need to shift it. So for example, the iPod came out from another question. It came from a question, where are people passionate about? And they concluded, music. That's where people are passionate about. So how can we help with our product offering that people have more access to music? It was a very different question that came out of that purpose and that direction they set. 15 years later, Apple was the most valuable company in the world, and it still is one of the most valuable companies in the world. Steve Jobs, in a later interview, said the start of that was all that thinking about that purpose. Purpose is powerful in any organization. Now, let me give you an example of a much more humble, a much more smaller example, how it also could work. 30 years ago, I was in a room like this. I was a business economics student listening to a lecture of a professor in organizational behavior. And there was a theory about that purpose is important in an organization. A couple of months later, I was elected as student union president with a new team of students to lead that union, student union. And the student union organized all kinds of activities, almost like we have here today. Lectures, study trips, conferences, seminars. And before the academic year started, we had an off-site day, like you normally have. And on the agenda was purpose. I thought we should put on the agenda. And we said, what should be the purpose of this organization? And we came to bridging the gap between theory and practice. That was kind of the logic. We need to help students to bridge the gap between theory and practice. That was easily said and done. The second item was, look at all the activities that we have. What activities should we organize that year? And then we concluded, probably a third of those activities had nothing to do with that purpose. And there were many other activities we could do. So we decided to cut those activities and start innovating new activities. Got a lot of pushback in the beginning. There was a lot of noise about what these guys doing with the union, but the student union. During the year, we used that phrase, bridging the gap to motivate ourselves every week. Let's try to bridge the gap for our students. Let's try to bridge the gap. New activities emerged, participation went up, membership went up, and as union really started thriving. I learned very early on the power of that notion of purpose in any organization. That can be really helpful to have. Right? That was really helpful to have. So what is purpose? Purpose is a simple answer to the question, why does an organization exist? It's not highly out there, it's just a simple question. The way you could think about it is, the purpose is, what do we do for others? What will we want to contribute? What do you want to do for others? That's what purpose is all about. If a team or a group or an individual or organization has that, it provides meaning. People need meaning. It provides direction. You can make better trade-offs. It gives energy, connection, and it leads to very good results. So some people tell me like, hey, this purpose thing is extremely a soft thing. No, it's very hard. Let me demonstrate with a couple of numbers. There's a mountain of research out there, literally a mountain of research that demonstrate that businesses that have clarity of purpose and really live that do much, much better than equivalent businesses that don't have it. People engagement, much higher. Every study shows that. Innovation rates, much higher. Customer loyalty, higher. And that leads to higher growth, but also to higher shareholder return. This is not soft. This is actually pretty hard. But how do organizations do? How do businesses do? Well, I created for myself a 5-point scale. First level is there is no purpose. You'll be surprised how many businesses and organizations don't have a purpose. The second one is there's a phrase in the annual report. In one of the businesses I became new CEO, I walked in that building in the head office, and on the first day I asked the head of marketing, hey, what is the purpose of this company? And he said, we have one. I said, what is it? I will look for it. Literally a couple hours later, I came back with the annual report from 3-4 years ago and said, there is it. There's the purpose. That means nothing. That's just a phrase on a piece of paper. The third level you can think of is the famous poster on the wall. I was in another situation I became in as a leader, and I visited different offices, and in one of the offices was a poster on the wall with values and purpose. And I asked the team that was sitting in front of that, what does that mean? I said, I think central marketing head office sent us that we had to put it on the wall. We don't know actually what it means. That's level 3. Level 4 is when people really start using purpose to make decisions to live with it. And then level 5 is really a purposeful driven company. Right? There's 5 levels. Just quick check in the room. Who think that the majority of businesses you interact with know are more in level 1, 2, 3? Who thinks it's more level 1, 2, 3? There's an overwhelming group of hands raising here that think it's 1, 2, 3. Let me share you some statistics. McKinsey did a recent big research, and there's a couple of big gaps. On the one hand, you see that when they interview business leaders, around 80% say this is important. But on the next question, do you have formulated purpose? It drops to 30%. If you then ask people on the work floor, frontline management people, do you experience purpose? Are you engaged in your work? How does it feel? Only 15% say that. There's a big gap of people think they do and what the reality is. Now, if you look on the right side, other surveys show that people really like to get meaning in their work. It's a vehicle to find purpose in their life. It's important to them. 80-90% of people surveyed all the time say, I look for meaning and purpose in my work. If you go to younger generations, Gen Z, even higher, they say, I select businesses where I want to work because of that. It's an important thing. There's a massive gap between these two. There's a massive gap. Now, what can you do about it? Now, I've been trying to apply certain tools and ways of doing this to really get these purpose-driven organizations going. And I learned a couple of things. There's 3 steps. The first step is mindset. What I mean by that is if you have a mindset that profit is the most important thing, you will never start working on the purpose. If you have a mindset that is, hey, it's just icing on the cake, it's kind of a soft thing. No, it's the foundation of the cake. If you think that comes later, no, it's now. Any organization should think about it. Doesn't matter what you do. What is your purpose? It's a foundational element. Right? So you need to change the mindset. I've also learned that if you try to convince people of the changed mindset, you run against walls because people have deep beliefs. And to that, I normally say, just do it. Ignore it and just move. Then the second thing is a fun part, is to be more creative. It's about how do you create a purpose. Some people get a heavy load off the shoulder that you want to carry the world with it. No, that's not it. It's a creative process where you create a sentence, what you're all about, what you want to contribute to others. That's what you do. And to do that, there's a couple of real elements. It should not be too long, it should not be boring, it should be engaging, it should be forward-looking, and it should be really authentic. I showed a couple of examples. So you see also the example of Nike. Nike was founded by athletes. This company really founded by athletes. They attracted athletes, they want to help athletes. That's where the purpose is all about, right? It's close to the heart. That's what you need to do. And once you have the purpose, you need to start communicating this. In my role, I communicate it all the time. Every board meeting, every management meeting, all the time. What is the purpose and how does it relate? And then, as I also explained earlier, you have to make sometimes the key decisions around that purpose. What are we going to do? Which products? Which business to buy or not? Or what we need to do? You have all key decisions you reflect with that purpose. And that's how you try to guide a team or organization. But then the last one is the most difficult one. Also the most inspiring one I found. Like in an orchestra, everybody plays together, is to find a way how everybody in an organization can contribute to a purpose. That's how the magic really happens. Let me give an example. In 1962, John F. Kennedy was visiting NASA. 2 years before, he had said, we need to get a man on the moon. I think that's a pretty impressive mission to have, pretty important purpose to have. And while he was visiting the head office of NASA, he walked on the corridor and there was a janitor cleaning the hallway. And he was a good politician. He had some journalists in the back, so he thought, maybe a good photo op. Let's stop. And he shook hands with the janitor. And he asked the janitor, what are you doing? And the janitor said, I'm putting a man on the moon. People laughed a little bit. But then the janitor said, listen, I make sure there's no dust here. These engineers walk through this corridor. If dust gets on their shoes or in their clothes and they go in the production area where these rockets are produced, a little bit of dust could blow off tiles when the thing goes up and it could explode. So I have a clear logic what I'm doing here, right? So the janitor thought, I'm putting a man on the moon. Imagine how people who make that connection, how they feel and how they then go to work. But that's kind of, there's a group of students also in this audience. Do you have to wait till you're in a senior position to make a business more purposeful? Or do you only want to join a purposeful company? Say, you can start today in any job. Let me give you another example. There was an interview in a local newspaper. There was a high school student who worked at the local supermarket and got awarded Employee of the Month. You see sometimes these pictures on the wall of the Employee of the Month, local student, high school student. And what interviewed? And the journalist asked, hey, great job. Why do you do such a good job? You want to have your picture on the wall? No, I actually don't like to have the picture on the wall. You get more money. No, that's not about the money. Oh, you want to have better shifts so you don't have to work these weekends late? No, I don't want shift. So the journalist was a bit baffled and asked, okay, so why are you working that hard? The student said, listen, I observed that at the end of the day, I see families, people after their commute, walk stressfully into the store to select their food for dinner. I'm responsible for the fruit and vegetables up front. If I make sure that it looks really well organized, right? Everything is there and looks pretty great. They pick healthy food and not like a frozen pizza in the back of the store. So what I'm doing, I keep the community healthy. Right? There's a high school student who found the meaning in their work. Right? Now, the scary statistic I also want to share, and then another opportunity. There's a big survey done by Gallup every year around the world, how engaged people are in their work in different countries all around the world. The score they always come up with now, the last years, is around 1 in 5. 1 in 5 is only engaged in their work. 4 or 5 of people are not engaged in their work. So 80% of people are not engaged in their work. They just go through the motion. Now imagine the difference how people come home at night. If you have an engaged job and you like your job and you're engaged, or you're not engaged. If you're not engaged, how do you show up to your friends, family, spouse, community? But also in your job, if you're engaged. How do you think the high school student inspires the people around her? Right? How do you think about that? Right? How do you think about that power, what's there? We have an incredible untapped opportunity in the world, and particularly also in this area of the world where we are here today, to really move that up, get more engagement. So, a dream is a big word, but let's imagine. Imagine a world that people inject much more purpose into business. It's good for all stakeholders, employees, customers, investors, society. Imagine if business does it much more. Imagine if that people who are engaged in the work, if it's not 20%, but goes to 80%. What type of life will happen in these businesses? What type of solutions will evolve? How will these people show up at home and in their communities? Now, is this a dream? Or is it a choice? The high school student said it's a choice. I think we all have a choice today to make that happen. Thank you.